I'm Tim Malloy with the Civic Association. It's June the 2nd. As we enter June, we carefully navigate the COVID-19 crisis. We have our eye on the tropics for hurricane season, but right now we're taking a look at domestic unrest, and it is in our region. It is possibly even going to touch Palm Beach. On Worth Avenue, where some shops and stores are shuttered, some are partially open, some are closing up tight. It has the feel of hurricane season, but with somewhat more urgency. No belief necessarily there's going to be trouble here, but there has in other major cities, and these are the highest-end stores in the world. So some owners, 5 or 6 that we spoke to, are closing up, taking all the precautions they can, and boarding up. So obviously you're just taking precautions.
Yes, insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's easy because they've always been made for the windows, so
right.
It's like they're super.
We don't necessarily anticipate anything, but it's a good idea to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. And better safe than sorry. It takes like 5 minutes for us to put these up.
These stores are generally well policed, well guarded, cameras, impenetrable in so many ways. But just the same, a lot of people taking no chance with the valuables that are behind those windows. Shoppers tootling along, looking in the windows, no doubt from out of town, most of them, wondering if Palm Beach, of all places, could be the next on the list. Here's Wendy Rutledge with more.
As you know, there have been protests across the bridge in West Palm Beach, and some of those protests did turn violent. Now, with social media buzzing that the island of Palm Beach might be a site for further protests, we spoke to the mayor and the president of the town council about exactly how the island is preparing for the possibility of protests.
First of all, neighbors, let me reassure you that we are safe, we are secure. It seems as if there's a perfect storm here, having been hit by COVID in March, and certainly the closure of businesses and the shutdown of our lives March and April and parts of May. This is the third of 3. Our town is ready. Town management has a strategic plan in place, and our police chief is prepared. He has a plan not only to have everyday boots on the ground, but increased personnel if needed. They will demobilize police that may be in a certain area to react to a hotspot. Our commercial districts are protected. Let me reassure you that we have additional mutual aid agreements with our local Palm Beach Sheriff's Department and the West Palm Beach Police Department to give us additional boots on the ground. We have reached out to our federal, state, and local governmental entities, for instance, the Coast Guard, Florida Department of Transportation, the Governor's Office, and the Mayor of the City of West Palm Beach to coordinate our efforts in a comprehensive manner. I think the additional threat under these circumstances has, of course, become social media, where we often could have planned for a possible event that was well circulated. They are much less organized now and able to react much more quickly by social media. However, our police also monitor many social media outlets. We are ready. Let me encourage you to follow the same directions that we have for the last several months. Stay informed. Watch for the update alerts that are happening every hour, on the hour, by our police and town administration, so that you are informed. Please do not be courageous and go and watch a protest. It will only hamper our police efforts to control the situation. And lastly, stay home. Stay home, stay indoors. We are safe, we are secure, and I am more than comfortable and confident in our police chief and his staff.
The mayor also addressed First Amendment rights versus public safety.
This Constitution protects our civil liberties. I have every knowledge that our residents would be in agreement that civil protest is certainly part of that constitutional right. However, violence, hostility, divisiveness will only exacerbate the situation, and there's absolutely no reason for looting and hurting and creating a situation that will further inflame this country.
Given the overheated national mood, Maggie Zeidman offered some perspective on the role of law enforcement.
I do think that people need to know that we have 800,000 sworn police officers in the United States. And then you need to ask yourself, and why do people go into it? Well, they go into it to protect us, to help others. And it's actually, among many people, it's a avocation. It's not a job, but it's an avocation that they have. to help us and to protect us and to keep us safe. So I think we need to keep things in perspective, that in every profession you might get someone who call them a bad apple or they don't do what they're supposed to do. But by and large, police are here to care for us, to protect us, keep us safe, to help us, and that's what they do. And I am particularly proud of our police force here, and I'm grateful to them. They're really a part of our community. We see them, they're up and down our streets, they walk our blocks, they're on our beach, they're in the South End, in the North End, in Midtown. They're really part of our community. And there's nobody more wonderful than our police. And I've known police from the get-go. I was an ER nurse, and we worked very closely with police in the emergency room. So I know what's in their hearts. I know what's in their souls. And that's why they become officers. The other point I think that is important to keep in mind is, what are we called to do? Well, I think that we are called to be our best selves, especially during something like this. The mayor said that it was a troubling time. It is a troubling time. We have coronavirus, we have what's going on right now. But I believe, and I am always hopeful, that the human spirit rises to be its very best. And that means that we all have to try to be our best every day. There's a Jewish saying, it's called Tikkun Olam, and it means to be a light in the world. We need some lights right now. We need some lights in the world. And so I think that during this time that may be a little troubling, I do believe it will get better, because when things settle down, people will empathize with one another, they will understand one another, there will be conversations that will be had, and we will come to a better place and a better understanding. In the meantime, try to be the light in the world. That's really the message, I think, that I have today.
Well, the beaches are open, and the town restrictions that were put out there have been fairly quickly dropped. Judging from the video I shot Sunday, not many people were heeding the specific warning to keep social distance and to keep moving. No lying on towels or sitting on beach chairs. The fact is, a lot of people, most people, are doing the exact opposite. Not blatant sitting on each other's laps, but no social distancing whatsoever. No movement on the beach. Basically, planting chairs and sitting in the sun, which everybody wants to do. So they did. From now on, we cross our fingers and hope people will follow the rules. It's back, and probably not for a limited engagement. Sargassum seaweed, smelly, very annoying to people with allergies. It's starting to wash ashore. The product of agricultural runoff and warming waters is dreaded by tourist destinations, dreaded in Florida. Happily, this time of year, much of it will be washed away. Last summer was particularly troublesome throughout the summer. The town's crusade to be pesticide-free has been pretty much lost in the coronavirus crisis. Councilwoman Bobby Lindsay the other day stepped up and said, look, we got to remember that even if you're leaving town or if you're staying, pesticides are not good for wildlife, not good for people, and please don't put them on the lawn over the summer.
Nutrients that run off, phosphorus and nitrogen are nutrients that run off in stormwater into the intercoastal help ignite and or enhance algae blooms, which occur during this time of year while people are away. And algae blooms, when the algae dies and it drops to the bottom to decompose, it uses up a lot of oxygen. And in many cases over the past couple of years, the oxygen levels have dipped dramatically, causing large fish kills. And that's a real problem for South Florida. So the responsible thing for all of us to do is to not place fertilizers on our property during the rainy season, between next week, June 1st, and the end of September.
This movement began back in February of last year with the theme, where have all the songbirds gone? Basically the theme being, if you don't use pesticides, natural things will happen. Birds, butterflies will come back, and we'll have a more natural setting in Palm Beach. So the crusade goes on through the summer. Hurricane season, as I said, began at the beginning of the month. Good idea to have a hurricane plan in place despite all the distractions we have right now. Wendy Rutledge now with a pretty good overview on what the threats are to our island and to your property if a hurricane hits.
Imagine there's this great big giant hurricane brewing in the Atlantic Ocean headed straight for South Florida. Well, that was exactly the situation a year ago when Hurricane Dorian was barreling toward Palm Beach Island. Now, most residents did obey the orders and evacuate, get off the island. So how exactly do local officials make the decision to ask residents to evacuate? Well, it's complicated.
Hurricane Dorian was a Cat 5 megastorm last year in late August, tracking straight for us. With winds up to 183 miles per hour, most would think the lashing wind would be the driving destructive force, threatening property, even human life. But it's not.
It's generally the surge that kills most of the people. It's the surge when people get caught in the flooding and they can't be rescued. So that generally leads to the most fatalities during a hurricane.
Take a look at this map to appreciate the island's vulnerability to flooding. Notice all the red? Those are areas just 2 feet above sea level. And notice where those areas are. Along the coastline, sure, a little bit, but primarily those low-lying areas are adjacent to the lake, the intracoastal. And these areas are home to some of Palm Beach's most treasured spots, the Society of the Four Arts, Worth Avenue, popular island clubs and restaurants. Predicting storm surge, though, is tricky, even unreliable. That, according to oceanographer Oscar Schofield, who spoke to Palm Beach Civic Association at its March 2nd Global Speaker Series luncheon.
We all know from the hurricanes that they can tell you exactly pretty well where a storm's going to go, but they do a horrible job, not because they're not trying, giving you the intensity at landfall. And that's why surges are usually so poorly predicted. You know, is it a 12-foot surge or a 5-foot surge?
So what does this mean for low-lying Palm Beach as we prepare for what is forecast to be a more active than normal hurricane season? Let's start with the facts, as put forth by Palm Beach County. According to emergency management, here's the assessment of the flood risk for the county as a whole. Quote, as a relatively flat, low-lying, heavily developed coastal county that experiences frequent, intense rain events and periodic tropical storms, Palm Beach County is especially susceptible to flooding. Add the fact that Palm Beach is a barrier island, and this puts Palm Beach into Evacuation Zone B, the zone assigned to surge vulnerable areas. Here's the critical piece. Though an evacuation may be issued even in anticipation of a Category 1 storm due to its potential for a dangerous surge, if the hurricane is a Category 2 or higher, you must leave.
For all storms of Category 2 or higher, the town of Palm Beach must evacuate entirely. We encourage you to have a plan for evacuation, to follow that plan if an evacuation is issued. Please do not attempt to stay on the island during an evacuation order.
In a normal year, should the town issue a mandatory evacuation order, the small population of summer residents would be able to book a hotel room somewhere inland or perhaps on Florida's west coast. But this is not a normal year, and 2 factors are at play. COVID-19 has so far forced the closure of most hotels, and those in operation are only accepting a limited number of guests. Add to that the fact that many residents who would normally go to cooler climes during the summer months are here, perhaps for the first time, during hurricane season. This means a much higher demand for hurricane shelter, coupled with a much smaller supply.
The virus is not going away. Should we the town become a threat under a hurricane and we have to evacuate the island, it presents a problem as it relates to the shelters, those that are going to seek shelter. Now, most of our residents don't generally use shelters, though some do. And I know that the state is looking into that now, to maybe occupy hotels and provide shelter in that capacity.
Whatever option for evacuation you choose, be it a friend's home or a hotel, it is important to make those plans now. Know where you can go and pre-arrange it as best you can. With storm surge being the greatest threat, is it too late to think about flood insurance should you not already have it? Know this, your homeowner's policy does not cover flooding. Insurance is provided through FEMA, though you can buy it in most cases from your local insurance agent. But here's the catch. There is a 30-day waiting period before it goes into effect. So again, now would be the time to act on flood insurance.
Oddly enough, hurricanes have one distinct advantage over other natural disasters, and that is that you really do have ample time to prepare. And there's a change this year. The National Weather Service is now giving us a 60-hour cone of uncertainty window in advance versus the 48 hours from prior years. So even though you may not need it, it's a great idea to put an evacuation plan into place. It is a great stress reducer in case the big one is headed our way.
I'm Tim Malloy with the Civic Association, where membership matters. If you are a member, we hope you'll renew. If you're not, we sure hope you'll join us. We'll talk to you soon.